All right, so I'm making this as a video, but it will also be on my podcast called Align Your Mind. So let's get started. Some people hold it like this, which I think looks a little proper like this. Doesn't matter. Okay. Hello and welcome to Align Your Mind. My name is Chelsea Tanner. I am a flutist and a mindset coach for musicians. Today we are talking about a method that I have come up with through my own experience, but also ones with my clients. This is part of a larger technique that I use with my clients, but I've found it to be very humorous and fun, and I wanted to teach it to you today because it's helped me personally so much in my life, and I know that it can be helpful to others too. So it's called the Silly Goose method, and I love the idea of a silly goose. I don't know why. I was a silly goose for Halloween a couple years ago even, and it was just very fun and funny. And the reason I was a silly goose is because I call myself a silly goose a lot. If I was tempted to call myself stupid, which I did a lot, I used to heavily identify with feeling stupid and not feeling smart. And if you're interested in hearing that whole story, you can check out the episode called Don't Tell Me I'm Talented. I kind of go into why that is and how I got out of it. But part of my self-talk improving was because of the Silly Goose method. Instead of calling myself stupid, I called myself silly. Now, I committed to doing this for years, and it builds up over time. Little shifts in language that you use with yourself, with others, with anything, it adds up. Words have power. They have emotional power. You feel things that you think. And if I think that was silly, or I think, oh, so stupid, those have two very different energies. And they are so important because one you can laugh about because you're a silly goose, and the other one feels like a self-judgment that is almost immovable, right? Like it's proof that your worst fear is coming true and that you're not a smart person. That is wildly different from each other. It's really easy to get stuck in such negative self-talk. And I think a lot of people think that the antidote to negative self-talk is somehow positive self-talk. And I don't think that at all. I actually think it's neutral. I think it's taking focus away from yourself, or it's calling yourself a silly goose and laughing. I think laughter is a great antidote to self-judgment, to be honest. And I don't think what I did was so stupid. No, I just made a silly goose move. And we make SGMs sometimes, you know? Sometimes we have some silly goose moves, and that's okay. We take this even further. We can call our brain a silly goose. Now, something I work with my clients on all the time, it's kind of step number one to separating yourself from your mindset so you can look at it in a way that makes sense to you and you can change it how you want to once you can see it clearly. The first thing is to observe your mind. Now, that can be done in hindsight at first, because we aren't always fully aware of what we're thinking at all times. I have really trained myself to be extraordinarily aware of what I'm thinking and feeling kind of all the time. It is a little bit more exhausting to live that way, I have to say, but I'm so much happier because I can take care of myself better. And I can see silly goose honks in my brain go off and dismiss them as just like silly goose noise, and they're just honking away. And this might seem silly and it might seem ridiculous, but I think that is better than it being heavy and judgmental, because even if it's a little jab, it's like death by 1,000 cuts, right? It's literally, it adds up so much over time. Imagine laughing every time you made a mistake instead of beating yourself up. Oh, that was such a silly goose move. I played a wrong note. That was such a silly goose move. I know this part. My mind was wandering. Totally different energy. So if you are the observer of your mind, first it's going to start where you're like, okay, what was I thinking and feeling in this space where I all of a sudden feel frustrated? Okay, what was I thinking? What made me feel frustrated? Then you get to the bottom of what were you thinking that made you feel that way? Because our thoughts create our feelings, our interpretation of the world creates our feelings. If that were not true, we would all feel exactly the same way about every circumstance. And we don't. And I think that's beautiful. But I think we got to own it. A lot of times we're like, that hurt my feelings, or that rejection made me feel. Yeah, those things are not what create feelings. It's your thoughts about them. And it's really important to get to know those thoughts because they're not you. There's some stuff your brain made up. It's the silly goose in your head that's trying to protect you. It means so well. It's a survival mechanism to doubt yourself, to put yourself down. Actually, if you can put yourself down and not go after that thing you want, then you avoid so much emotional pain. You stay safe. So thinking about your brain sometimes as a silly goose can be really helpful because it's endearing and it's sweet and it's silly. And I just wish everyone would call themselves a silly goose sometimes. It makes you take it a little bit less seriously. And if you're going to make a judgment about anything that you've done, I have a lot of clients who have a hard time separating, okay, I said these things to myself, I thought these things about that, and it made me feel inadequate, but why am I thinking that way? I shouldn't be thinking that way. And then they're adding shame on top of the self-judgment when we really just want to observe that it's happening. But sometimes it happens automatically. We judge ourselves for judging ourselves. I've done it so much. As a coach myself, I'm like, I should be able to figure this out. Why can't I feel better? Like I should be better. Believe me, it's not as easy for anybody. We all have human brains. So what I recommend is observing what's already happened, what's happening in your mind now. And if it doesn't align with intentionally how you want to think and feel about yourself, call your brain a silly goose. Okay? It's just being a silly goose. And I think that sometimes we make some silly goose moves. We all do it. Our brain does it. But it doesn't have to be so heavy, and you don't have to judge yourself for it. I really think a gateway to compassion is through silly goosery. And I stand by that. Take this and implement it in your own life, or don't. Do whatever you want. But I wanted to share this because this makes light of a situation that has built up probably years and years of feeling inadequate and putting yourself down. And know that there's a different way. And there's a way through with laughter. There's a way through with stating neutral facts. There's a way through that doesn't involve toxic positivity and like you have to be your own cheerleader at all times. I'm personally not the cheerleader type. And I don't ever say like, go Chelsea. I feel like that is a little bit surface level. And if you're doing this work, you're probably a deep thinker. So it can be fun. It can be really helpful. But in the end, I think it's important to realize when your brain is honking and when it needs to be called out as a silly goose. It doesn't have to be more serious than that. If you want to get curious about like, why is my brain thinking this? You can. And if you need help with that, I'm here. I have one-on-one coaching. I also have a coaching community on School in case you would like individual coaching or help. But once again, reframing these words into silly words can open up so much brain space and create just a little bit of joy in your day. Try it. See how it works. It's gonna feel silly, I promise. And it's one of my favorite things I've discovered because all of this stuff just feels so heavy and serious all the time. Sifting through, how your brain's operating, what are you doing, how do you change your mindset? It's like, it feels like sometimes it's such a big hurdle when really a little step you could do is just call yourself a silly goose when you're being a silly goose. And that goes for anything mean. Like, I can't believe I beat myself up again. And you're beating yourself up about beating yourself up. That's a silly goose move, my friend. That's all there is to it. So if you are wanting to work on those beliefs about yourself and you don't really like them and you want to change your stories about what you believe, click the next video here. It is all about self-concept and why I think it is at the root of everything that you want to change in your life. So if you get that down, it's really powerful. All right, I will see you next time, you silly goose.